Hey everyone, Rich Monroe here with B&B Investing Group. Thanks a lot for jumping on. B&B Investing Group helps investors kind of navigate the short-term rental model, whether you're doing acquisitions, leasing, or managing properties for other investors. And so I'm happy to report today I've got a good friend of mine, Malhar from M2 Rest, and we're going to talk about his real estate business. Short-term rentals, I think, is one aspect of what he does, but there's a lot of different things that Malhar does. I actually first met Malhar. I was trying to figure out when. I think it was a Fortune Builders coaching at a rehab project where Malhar did a tour on a bus in downtown Atlanta at one of his rehab projects. And I think that's the first time we met. That was such a long time ago. But Malhar, thanks so much for jumping on today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I've been doing real estate now for 16 years, and we do everything from fix and flips, buy and holds, obviously short-term rentals, mid-term rentals, do some private lending, do development deals, new construction, have done wholesaling in the past, not as much right now, but from time to time, if it's not a deal that fits for me, we'll wholesale it. So yeah, kind of run the gamut when it comes to real estate. And obviously we're talking about short-term rentals today. So we've been doing short-term rentals for almost 4 years now. It'll be 4 years. I think on August 1st is when we went live on our very first property of 2020. So still a few months before we hit 4 years, but it's been going really well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So being the fact that, and we all know that real estate has so many different niches, right? And so many different angles of what you can focus on. And so for a long time, I think you were focused mainly on buying properties, rehabbing them and reselling them. Yeah. At what point did you decide, and what was the trigger that said, maybe I should look at this short-term rental thing a little bit harder?
So fixing and flipping, new construction, anything that we get an opportunity to sell for decent profit margins. I guess we came to terms, my wife and I, at one point where we realized this is a well-paid job. If we're not buying more properties to renovate and resell, it shuts down our income. We got really, really good at it. And I think it was a great foundation for some of the other things we got into. But we felt like short-term rentals, if they were systemized in a certain format, that they can bring in a substantial amount of income on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, that can help lead us more into the direction of buy it once, fix it once, and continue to, obviously we have systems, turn it over and basically build passive income in a certain type of format,
Yeah, I totally agree. I think my wife and I came to the same conclusion about 8 years ago that the money is great with fix and flips, but like you point out, it's a job, it's work. It's, if those contractors don't show up or if somebody screws up, you've got to step in. And the constant need to potentially keep that pipeline going, you got to get that next deal in order for it to work is a constant grind. And that's one of the main reasons I shifted over to only doing short-term rentals is because of that.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the first one that you ended up doing. Was that a property that you had already acquired as a rehab? Was it one that you bought already fixed up? What was that first one?
So every single one of our properties that we own as short-term rentals, we don't manage other people's. We don't do rental arbitrage. We own all of them. And so it was a deal that on paper, it looked like a good deal that could be a decent fix and flip. However, it was in a premium area of Metro Atlanta. And so we looked at it, and that's when we were kind of thinking about shifting more into a short-term rental or some sort of more passive income type of model. I mean, we owned long-term rentals for many, many years before that, and they're cool, but they don't make, a ton of money on a monthly basis.
Well, you end up losing when the AC goes out or when the tenant gets evicted and you got to rehab again, and you look at your numbers and it's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. The turnover was crazy. Plus, if you only inspect that, and I think we were better landlords than most, but we only got to inspect that maybe once or twice a year, and a lot of damage can happen in once or twice a year. With short-term rental on that very first property, because it was in such a prime location, instead of fixing and flipping it, we decided, hey, why don't we try this model out on this first one? And so this one was right next to the East Side Beltline. We still own it to this day. It's actually one of our best performing properties because we also added a tiny home in the back of this same lot. And so we built a new small tiny home, and we have a main house, which is not big, but because of its prime location, we're able to garner it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and we're able to get on average about 150 to probably even more than that, probably about 175 a night.
Nice. And is that the one that's in your background with the pink door?
No, that's another one.
That's a different one? Okay.
Yeah, that's a different one. This one was going to be a short-term rental, but because all the craziness of what was happening, if you remember, I said our first one went live in August 2020. The craziness of still the uncertainty of COVID and whatnot, we were actually going to have an upstairs unit, which behind me you see the upstairs door, and then the downstairs door right here, right?
Yeah.
That was going to be a separate unit, but then what we ended up doing is just the craziness of COVID. We said, you know what, this one, let's go ahead and sell it. So we just renovated and sold it. So this one did not become a short-term rental.
Okay. And so the first one that you did, and this is something that's become quite popular now that you've kind of done this so far in advance, but the whole concept of ADUs and tiny houses and being able to generate revenue on multiple units on one lot. And so that's been going well. There wasn't any conflict with guests or parking or anything like that.
No, so we really thought through some of that. Of course, we had some learning pieces that came into play, right? Trial and error stuff, some stuff specifically with neighbors and where our guests might park, etc. So we created separate parking for the tiny home, separate parking for the main house. It's very rare where someone blocks the driveway or something like that, but what we've done really well is to mitigate any issues that come up on our short-term rentals. We have small signs pretty much throughout the house, easy for guests to know what light switches work for what lights, where they might be able to find a remote control, or we try to provide a ton of information so we minimize the amount of conversation that we or our team needs to have with guests, and we have like VAs that help us out with all that guest communication.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about the numbers. So I know it was probably your wife Danielle that did all of the staging and setup, but I know you're the numbers guy. So what did it cost you to get those units set up in the beginning? If you can recall, just ballpark.
I would say, now these were full gut renovations. So everything in the house was brand new. It was also in a conforming historic district. So we had to kind of replace some of the stuff in the home with historical items, which can be significantly more pricey. So do you want to know what it cost for the renovation, or the, which I don't think is necessarily relevant, but just the outfitting of the space?
Both is fine, just to kind of get from start to finish what it looked like.
Yeah, so we're talking about a house that was probably about 865 square feet. We spent about 140,000 for a gut renovation. Just to put it in context, there was no bathroom in the house. Someone was living in there, and they were kind of going to the bathroom in the backyard at the time. So, we had to put plumbing in, multiple bathrooms, the whole 9 yards. And this was earlier, before all the pricing and rehabbing costs went through the roof. So we spent about 135, 140 for that. And outfitting homes, like now we have a very specific system. This includes furniture, everything from furniture to towels to pots and pans to forks and knives and sheets and everything, we're spending on average probably about 10 to 12,000, depending on how big the home is. So I would say probably about 5 to 6,000 per bedroom, although that's not an exact science because, we might have 4 bedrooms, but only 1 kitchen. So you don't need multiple sets of pots and pans and things like that. So that's kind of the rough number as to what I would say we spent.
And that includes the tiny house in the back as well?
No, the tiny home was completely separate. To build out the tiny house was probably another about 110 at that time. And to outfit it was probably about $5,000 or $6,000, maybe $7,000.
Okay, that's pretty good. That's not so it didn't take you that long to recoup that initial upfront expense.
Oh no. Yeah, it's really awesome. And the cool part is obviously they're mortgage properties. So yeah, we're making cash flow. But the thing that I love about ownership is that they make us I'm building equity, right? All the time.
So what is the monthly gross income on both of those units?
So the monthly gross is right around $8,800 a month on a
That's
2-bedroom. Yeah, on a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and then like a studio with a loft space and a 1-bath. That's the tiny home.
So it's almost $10,000 a month in revenue. If you did that as a long-term rental, what's the max you could get, you think, with the market average?
As a long-term rental, I would probably say we would at most be able to get like 1/3 that, maybe $3,300, $3,500 a month.
So because of the location, it's a good area.
Yeah.
You got 2 different dwelling units.
Yeah.
So $3,300. So you're making $5,000 to $6,000 more doing short-term rental. Why would anybody want to do long-term rental? It boggles my mind that you got the same asset, you're generating 3 times the revenue.
Yeah.
Why are you playing around with long-term rentals? Just doesn't make logical sense to me. It doesn't.
Yeah. Well, no, that's a valid point. I mean, I also think it comes down to location, right? So I make sure that whenever we acquire properties for short-term rental, that they're going to be in spots that are going to be pretty desirable, either close to the city. Like I'm not a vacation owner, vacation short-term rental owner. I don't really understand that model as well. I've never tried it though. But what seems to work really well for us is we stay near the areas that are going to be desirable for people that might be visiting the city for sometimes like medical procedures. Sometimes they have, we have some that are very close to a whole cluster of colleges in Metro Atlanta. Also, many that are not in, but close to some of the hot spots downtown, those types of areas. So, it's a quick hop, skip, or jump to downtown or some of the top tourist attractions, things like that.
Okay, so very cool. So you're killing it. You're making all this revenue, and then how long was it before you started saying, let me get some more of these?
Very, very soon after I saw some of the numbers. I think it was probably within the first 3 months that I got very clear. I want to get to 20 as fast as I could. And the reason I came up with the number 20 was because I felt like when it was less than 20, I couldn't hire someone or afford to hire someone that can basically be managing it on a day-to-day basis, the eyes and ears. Because, with short-term rental, there is more operational costs or operational costs, not just of money, but of time. Because you got to replenish, basic stuff, salt, pepper, toilet tissue, things like that. But I knew that we didn't want to be doing it. Me or Danielle, my wife, we didn't want to be the ones doing it. So I wanted to get to 20 as fast as possible. And I would say we got to 20 in about 18 to 24 months. Actually, no, it was about 18 months. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's like one a month. Like that's a pretty quick pace.
Yeah. Well, the way we were able to do that at such a quick pace is we started buying properties that were duplexes or triplexes. We started putting ADUs in the back, or tiny homes, things like that, so that we could increase the speed at which we could put doors in.
Love it, love it. And so now that you're at 20, do you have like a dedicated person that oversees the operation? Is that
Yeah.
someone on payroll, or is it a virtual assistant? How's that?
So we have someone that is on our payroll. That's kind of like, we call them our field assistant, but and they do other things in our business as well, but their primary function is to make sure that they're overseeing our properties, so that, you know, on a Saturday or Sunday, I don't have to run out, or my wife doesn't have to run out to go, you know, replenish something or what have you. It is a management heavy business, like I said, but we have it down to a system and a science at this point. And I'll say this, we've done really well with it. Specifically about what I believe about short-term rentals is it can be a repetitive business in a good way, right? Not in a bad way, not like because of boredom. The point is to systemize the guest experience. And so putting notes up so that guests know what lights to turn on, or how to adjust the thermostat, or turn the TV on, or whatever the case may be. If you can create a repeatable, systematic experience, you can continue to get great ratings on different types of platforms like Airbnb, VRV, or what have you. And that's what we really focused on hardcore. And then any of the guest communication that comes in, this is handled by a VA service that we utilize.
Yeah, I mean, you put the nail on the head. In order to be successful, your entire operation has to be focused on getting that 5-star review. If it isn't, then you're going to start failing pretty quickly. So whether it's your operation team, your guest communications, your back office, the cleaner, the maintenance person, everybody has to be, you know, singing off that same song sheet for that model, especially at scale, to work. So totally agree with you. So I think I toured one of your properties. It's been a couple years ago now. It might have been before COVID. But my wife and I came out and looked at one of your projects that was very cool. You guys have 3 duplexes, all on neighboring lots on the same street. And you basically got all of those set up as short-term rentals. And is that the listing that we're going to take a quick look at, or did you?
Yeah.
All right, let's pop that up and talk about that real quick.
Sure. So this is the listing. You only have 4 doors here, but there's actually 6. 6 didn't fit in the picture as well. And so there's 6 separate units. Each one is a 2-bedroom, 1 bath. So we bought these as, I mean, they were in really bad shape. And so we bought them. Again, we gut renovated them, but they were already duplexes. So we came in and they were like oversized 1-bedrooms, 1 baths. In some of them, the floors were collapsing. So we came in, did a gut renovation on them, and we kind of did this playful, like different colored units. And so I can click on it so that you can see some of the photos. So each one is outfitted very similar, has like a nice little sitting front porch, nothing too big, you know, living room, kitchen area, and then small dining area, which can seat 4 people, kitchens, you know, and then we take pictures of every amenity that we provide in the home. Then it has nice bathrooms, you know, single vanity baths, they work, and then 2 bedrooms. You have one that's slightly larger that we kind of call the primary. It's not a huge room at all. And then we have a smaller bedroom, which is like the secondary bedroom. Each one also has its own parking spot. And then, yeah, all of them are set up in different, like these different color schemes. So you have the yellow unit, you have the pink unit, you have the lime green unit, where you can see all the accents are lime green. You have a navy blue unit.
So you must drive the cleaning team crazy with keeping the right colors and the right units.
Well, it's that they don't ever move anything, right? And then, there's sometimes turnover happens and, a pillow goes missing or is soiled, then you just got to buy another one that's kind of fits in that same color scheme, right? That
Yeah.
orange color scheme or blue or what have you. And so this is kind of how they're set up. And, we just took nice professional photos to make them look really nice.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And guys, so if you didn't notice on this listing page, there's 4.93 out of 5-star reviews. He's got 1,615 reviews. And so when you've had so many guests come into your properties and are able to do, super host status type guest experiences, that's what this business is about. And so don't kid yourself. If you're not into hospitality and making sure that you're on point with that, this may not be the right model for you. So that's in order to be successful, you really got to have that be as a core focus, like we talked about before.
Yeah.
So Malhar, how do you have the listing set up? If I wanted to book, do you have them all in one listing and they just get blocked off as you book the 2 bedrooms, and then it only has the other ones available? So it's all on one listing.
Yeah, so all of it is one listing. We utilize a platform that allows us to advertise multi-unit listings. And so, and it automatically adjusts based off of occupancy. Like, we don't place them into the blue unit or the pink unit. It automatically does that based on, I might have a guest checking in on Tuesday and checking out on Friday, but another guest checking in on Wednesday and checking out on Sunday. Well, it automatically adjusts so that I can maximize my occupancy and minimize how many gap nights I have.
Yeah, and it's definitely more efficient as far as your listing exposure and rankings when folks are looking. It's better to have one main listing with all the activity than it is to have multiple ones. So
absolutely,
that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, exactly. And when someone even looks at this, the fact that you have 1,600 reviews and a 4.93 average rating, that gets a lot of views. In fact, I was actually on, I forget what it was. Maybe it was AirDNA or there was another one. And I was looking at the top rated homes, and this actual listing is the top rated home in Airbnb in terms of amount of lists in Metro Atlanta in terms of amount of reviews. And the reason we were able to do that so quickly is because every single, we have a 2-night minimum. So every single guest that comes in and they're reviewing it, we get 6 times as many reviews as the average listing. So that's huge.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, are you on other platforms besides Airbnb?
Yeah. So we are on VRBO. We don't utilize any other ones just yet. Honestly, I haven't had to. My revenue numbers are good. We are able to continue maintaining the properties and still make a decent amount of profit per door, and so I haven't really ventured out into looking at other ones, mostly because I've now experienced this with VRBO. There are some spam messages that I get from time to time. And Airbnb, I feel like, has a more robust way of screening their own guests on their side. So I'll be honest with you, it's been very rare that we've had a problem. Maybe once or twice a year we'll have a problem occur, and nothing that's not solvable with a quick call to, either someone on our own team, or if we have to escalate it, then, we work with the security team as well. But that's literally been maybe once in the last 4 years.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. How do you do direct bookings as well?
We do direct bookings. And so some of the ways that we've gotten direct bookings is referrals. People will refer different folks to us, and they'll reach out sometimes via Instagram or some social media platform. Sometimes they will reach out. Typically it's via some sort of social media, or they'll email email our Danielle's profile, because we have an email in our units as well. Or if they're repeat guests, they might have saved our phone number or something, So yeah, that's how we do get
All right.
direct bookings.
So now that you're at 20, are you done? You're not going to add any more? What's the future look like for your short-term rental business right now?
So we're not done for sure. And you know me well, Rich, so I'm never really ever done. I do want to continue to increase our short-term rentals. I'm a little bit more cautious right now, just simply because of, there's always been all this conversation about regulation coming into the marketplace. So I've been slow with that. Also, I wanted to try my hand out at midterm rentals. What I do find that I like much better about short-term rentals than midterm rentals is short-term rentals are less, it's less necessary for outreach, right? Like you just constantly have leads coming to you. And that's one of, I think, in any business, in our fix and flip business, anything, that's one of the most time-consuming things that you have to invest time and money into. And that's something I think a lot of people don't talk about. And that's one thing I really like about short-term rentals is I'm consistently just getting a train of leads just coming in on a consistent basis. And then, our VAs are trained to work them through the process. But, like I said, and you said already, you produce a good product, you continue to take care of any issues that guests have quickly, because, for example, today we had an AC that wasn't working. We got a message from our thermostat that happened at 9 a.m, and the entire AC got fixed before 3 o'clock today, and so we like to make sure it's short and quick, because when a guest is staying for 2 or 3 days, if they don't have AC for half their stay or maybe their entire stay, it's not a great experience, right? Especially in the heat of Metro Atlanta in summertime. But that's one thing that I really enjoy about short-term rentals a lot more than midterms. I don't have to hunt for the client.
Yeah, and a lot of people take that for granted. The Airbnb platform, there's a reason why this is a successful model that works. They charge us 3% to list our property, and they take care of a lot of that stuff that we take for granted, collecting the payment. There's a lot of other platforms that are trying to do this that have been failing because they don't have that part figured out. So that's definitely a plus. And so we got a question here. I'm going to throw it up. What are important things to consider when looking for a property manager for MTR and SDR? And so, obviously, what we're talking about with your properties, Malhar, and for mine as well, frankly, we self-manage all of our properties. But obviously, some investors choose to use property managers, and that's definitely another option. And I actually teach a lot of our students how to manage properties. So that's another way to kind of make money in this space. But what's your opinion on that? What are some things to consider if you were to look for a property manager?
Yeah. So a while back, we did start looking for a property manager, but then when it came down to understanding what their rate structure was, in addition to additional fees for different, for example, channel managers that we might utilize, it just ended up being pretty astronomical. And so I looked at the numbers and I said, well, instead of paying someone, sometimes 10, 15, not 10, but it was usually 15 to 25 or 30%, and usually of gross revenue, I can use, this is why I want to get to 20 so fast. I can hire someone and build out the system effectively, and it'll be a system that I feel really good about, me and my wife feel really good about. So I think the things to consider if you do want to go that route, first of all, is it going to be profitable? Is it always going to be your first question? Because it is a lot more entailed in it. So I understand why property managers for short-term rentals charge more, but you have to, it's a equation, first and foremost. Second of all, I'd want to know what is their average response time, because I find that people that are booking short-term rentals, if you don't get back to them usually on the same day, and typically within a few hours, they're going to go book somewhere else, right? Because they're not coming into town for months on end. They're coming into town for 2-3 days, 5 days. And so if you don't respond fast enough, they might go on and find something else.
Yeah, so that responsiveness is key. And so we typically, our guest communications team usually tries to respond within 5 or 10 minutes, because here's the reality. And a lot of you, if you're not doing this, you should be doing this. If you want to get into short-term rental space and run your own operation, when you travel, stay at an Airbnb, stay at a short-term rental, so you can kind of understand it from the guest perspective. So when I'm going to a conference in a few weeks in Austin, Texas, and so I want to know how far the conference center is from that Airbnb location. So I'm going to ask probably 5 different properties I'm looking at that same question. And if you don't respond, guess what? I'm not going to book, right? And so in some cases, I mean, you mentioned hours and maybe within 24 hours, but in some cases, people are making those decisions within an hour or 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's critical that you respond to any of those inquiry questions in the beginning, because they're going to move on to the next listing if you don't respond. So that is a critical part of it, and it's going to be lost income for you for sure.
Yeah. The other thing I also want to know is, what type of average, like if you're managing everything, I want to know what type of cleaning ratings do you have? There are platforms now that will pull your cleaning ratings. I want to make sure the cleaners are on point, because by far what I've noticed, even when I go stay at different short-term rentals around the country when I'm traveling, it could have a couple of things that are not functioning properly, but if it feels dirty or not properly cleaned, it is a completely different experience. And that is the number one thing I think that has helped us keep our ratings really high, is continue to make sure that you have a very standardized cleaning process. We have like a 42-point checklist on our properties to make sure that every single thing is handled and touched and cleaned. Actually, that's something that we've learned from you a long time ago, was when you and Marva told us, make sure that every single surface in the house is touched, right? And dust collects over time, specifically on baseboards or over the fridge or something like that. Cleanliness by far, I believe, is one of the most important things for guests. So I'd want to know that piece as well.
All right, let's jump to the next question. You touched on having to deal with challenging neighbors when converting a residence into a STR. Do you have any advice or something critical you learned to help work through that challenge?
Yeah. So one of the things that we do right at the onset of a project, before we're even live, I mean, this is usually when we're renovating it or outfitting the property, is we go meet all the neighbors. We give them our phone number. Hey, if there's ever any problem, you call us. Don't call anyone else. Call us, and we will deal with it right away. We also have outdoor security cameras at all of our properties, and we disclose this on all of our listings. But by far, we make sure that we maintain good communication with neighbors. It's not reactive, we are proactive. So we go out, we give them their phone numbers. Just the other day, I think it was last week or something, one of the neighbors on one of our units texted us saying one of our guests had parked in a spot that was causing a traffic jam on the street. And so we just we messaged the guest, hey, you're not supposed to park there. And it was resolved, right? A lot faster than if they would have called the police, towing company, what have you. So whenever there's been issues like that, it's rare, but you can't control every single guest. But if they're being loud at 3 a.m. and it's disturbing the neighbors, I'll tell you this, no host wants that type of attention on their property. So we're proactive with our neighbors.
Yeah, totally agree. The last thing you want to do is to be introduced to your neighbor in something bad happening with that guest that's in there. That's the worst situation. And so we do the exact same thing. Even before we go live, we're introducing ourselves and making our phone numbers available if there's any issues that come up. And that's usually the best way to be proactive for sure. So let's back up a little bit, Malhar. I don't know that I got an answer regarding where you're going from here in terms of what the next steps are, what your goals are, with short-term rentals. What's next?
Yeah, I think we'll continue to monitor what's going on. We have started to step into the midterm rental space a little bit more. However, we've had some turns on some of our midterm rentals now, and I don't like those because we have to keep going back in and painting walls and fixing things, which
like
we don't have to do.
Yeah. It's like deja vu with long-term tenants, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we don't have to do that with short-term rentals because people don't even have the time to destroy our walls and furniture, right, during that time. So I do want to continue to expand our short-term rentals in the right spots, especially because these days short-term rentals get a lot of flack. And I think it's just some of those absentee owners that don't really care or are not paying attention to it, are not focusing on the hospitality side. Because at the end of the day, like, this is a hospitality business. This is a portion. Yes, it's a real estate investment business, but something that I'm very clear about is it is a hospitality business. And so if you're not prepared to be good with customer service, I think you're going to have an uphill battle trying to keep your units occupied. So for me, I want to continue to expand our short-term rentals further, but be very clear about some of the locations I want, because people that are coming for certain days, for like 2 or 3 days, they don't mind being on a main road. Whereas if I'm doing a fix and flip, most people don't want to buy on a main road. So I've started looking at properties on main roads because, hey, if someone's coming into town, yeah, exactly, 2 or 3 days, they like those. But I might not be able to flip that property, but who cares? I plan on holding on to this property for 10, 15, maybe 20 years. It'll grow in equity anyway, so I can pull the cash out over time. So
is all of your portfolio within inside the perimeter in the city of Atlanta, or do you have some that are in the outskirts? They're all within the perimeter.
Yeah, they're all inside the perimeter. We do have a triplex that is not in the city of Atlanta, but it's in Scottsdale. And that one, we find a lot of folks that are coming to Emory or, some of the hospitals on the northeast quadrant of Atlanta, they like to stay in. So we get a lot of like medical procedure type of folks or people that might be visiting family more near the northeast quadrant of the city. Everything else is probably about at most 10 or 15 minutes from downtown Atlanta.
Very cool. So as we close out here, what is one bit of advice that you could give someone that's trying to get into short-term rentals, specifically with the model that you've kind of perfected as far as acquisitions? Knowing what you know now, what kind of advice would you give that person?
I think that you have to come to terms with the fact that guests come in all shapes and sizes. Literally, I'm sure you've seen this, Rich, where all of the detailed instructions are sent to them and they're still going to show up and be like, I can't get in, and, that's commonplace. Like I said, guests come in all shapes and sizes. Don't be surprised if someone doesn't read your instructions or something like that. I think you really have to come to terms with the fact that it is a hospitality business. So as when it comes to acquiring properties, make sure that you're not buying in the quietest neighborhood in town where, all your neighbors are super nosy or really you think they're going to give you a hard time. Guess what? You might have an uphill battle with that, right? So if you're planning during your due diligence, if you're buying the property, or even if you're thinking about doing rental arbitrage, make sure you get a feel for the neighbors. And how do you do that? Knock on their door, talk to them. Hey, I'm thinking about buying this property next door or renting this property next door. What do you think of the neighborhood, right? That's an open-ended question that you want them to gush. Oh yeah, we know everything that's going on in our neighborhood. If you have nosy neighbors that are always knowing what's going on the street, sometimes that can be a challenge because you're going to try to mitigate to make sure that all of your guests are going to follow every single rule that you have. But reality is people come in for vacations. Some of them want to party, and, knock on wood. Luckily, we've been very blessed with the fact that we haven't had any crazy parties, but I'm sure people have blasted music in my units and, you know, gotten a little bit more than tipsy in some of them, you know, so you have to come to terms with that. And I think the biggest thing that we concentrate on is how do we mitigate some of the things that they're going to do and keep them inside the doors of our units, you know?
Got it. Got it. So listen, Malhar, thanks again so much for jumping on this week. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Just a reminder, if you are ready to kind of learn about scaling a business with short-term rentals and want to see how the B&B investing program can help you, reach out to me directly on Facebook Messenger. We can have a quick call and see what your goals are and see if it's a good fit for you or not. So until then, we'll see everybody next week. And Malhar, thanks again, buddy. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, Rich. Thanks for having me. Take it easy.
Take care.